Hi everyone. In this video I want to quickly go through like an intro to the Nephio project. The project started from, I think, by Google engineers, but now it's under the Linux Foundation umbrella. What Nephio tries to do, from what I read, is that it's like an intent-based solution, which from which you can build a large-scale deployment for your Kubernetes deployment. Specifically, I think this would be ideal with like a telco infrastructure whereby you have thousands of, especially maybe on the RAN side, where you have thousands of hundreds of sites, and then you also have the cores, or maybe the packet core, all spread out across regions or thereabout. So how do you automate the deployment to all these clusters in a cloud native way and in an automated way? So that's what I think Nephio is trying to do. This is from, as you can see on the screen, this is like the still the release 1 now, and I still think there are a lot of things that will still be added. So I think it's still, I would say, a little bit of the early days, but we'll see how it goes. So for me also, this is quite new, so I'm actually like taking baby steps in trying to see what Nephio is all about. So to do that, I decided to give it a try on my own. So if you go through this, you see learning with Nephio release 1. So I'm not going to really go through that because I think it's kind of automated. You have Ansible script and stuff like that. So I didn't really want to go through that. It might be a bit because I really want to understand how what goes on behind the scenes. So luckily I got a very good introduction from the Kubernetes blog. And some disclosure, I also worked with Kubernetes for some time, so it's nice seeing something from here that also really helps. So this is a well-written blog, I would say, because it helped me to really have a feel of how to just kickstart Nephio. So yeah, so you can have a look at this. So I'm not going to go through everything that is being done, but practically I went through all these steps to for instance, to create a repo, and then to integrate it with the Kubernetes cluster. So in short, Nephio has a bit of so it's on the in the background, it's using mostly this project called Kpt. So Kpt also is a new project for me also, because what we are really used to is like Helm customized, and if I'm not mistaken, I think at the back end also Kpt might be using something like customized, but I cannot authoritatively say that, but I think I saw it somewhere online. So essentially you can see Kpt as some kind of your templating tool, like instead of using Helm or customize, you get to use some they are called Kpt functions and stuff like that. So you see, if you want to install a particular package, you need to first of all get the package, and then you do a init, and then you apply it, and then it's almost like doing an Helm pool thereabout in your in your Kubernetes cluster, right? And then you do an Helm deploy, right? So once you do the Helm deploy, then you have it in your cluster. So instead of the Helm deploy, Helm install. So instead of doing the Helm install or Helm upgrade or your Helm command, so this is how I was able to reconcile it. I mean, how I was able to use my Helm background knowledge to know how this works. So instead of using Helm, just take note that this is just an example of but with this you have a bit of more controlling, like you have functions that you can use to render the these packages, and then you can now deploy it. So so this blog post goes from the start, installing Nephio, and then all the likes. And then what you have is you have the concept of like a management cluster. So yeah, it's called Nephio master cluster. So this is where you make all your intent, and then from here it now pushes the deployment packages to these repositories, and these repositories again will be connected to each cluster that you actually want the deployment to be installed. So this also is if you see it, it's using config sync. So config sync is like your Flux or your Argo CD, right? So it's a GitOps tool, and it operates almost the same way as Flux or Argo CD, in that it does a reconciliation based on what is on your Git repo. So if there is a Git push to these repos, and then you'll be able to the config sync will pull it up and then we'll deploy it. But in Nephio, as I read, you are not tied to using config sync. You could actually replace this with Flux or any other GitOps. The main advantages of what Nephio does for you is actually here, from the management cluster then to the different repos. So these repos will be where Nephio will now be controlling. Now the good thing is Nephio will give you the interface of like you being able, when you do when you want to deploy a package, or if you want to install any CNF or any other Kubernetes application in your remote clusters, right? It gives you the option of like you see a bit of more granular control. You see it will be proposed. First of all, it will create a draft, and then it goes on to proposing it, and as it's creating the draft or the proposal, you see the changes in this Git repo. So it's like following the Git methodology also. So I'll leave a link to this blog post in the comment section for you to have a look, because I cannot take we cannot take everything in one shot. So but for today, from the Nephio learning release 1, from the release 1 learning series which was done, they made use of free5gc. So then with the free5gc, they had operators, a free5gc operator that is responsible for creating the actual deployment in the Kubernetes cluster. So I decided to go, like I said, I'm taking sort of like a baby step, and I'm trying to see how, okay, let me try to deploy Open5gs, right? And to see how it can be done. But then I will not be using an operator. Instead, I'll be making use of the Flux Helm release controller and the Helm source controller to actually deploy the Helm charts in this cluster. So here you see I have I call it the Nephio management cluster. So you see this is where we have the Nephio pods, the porch, the package orchestrator. Then you have the config sync also. So in the Nephio management cluster too, you could have config sync to do that. You can also do that, but the main emphasis in this video is we call this the original cluster, and then the Hedge 01 cluster. The original cluster will host the Open5gs control plane components. So this is an example of how ideally you deploy a 5G network, because the control plane functions, they do not necessarily need to be closer to where the RAN or where the user traffic is. So that's why you have the Edge cluster. So the Edge cluster here is ideally where you have not only the UPF, but here for now we only have like the UPF. In a full 5G deployment, you will actually see your CU, also your CU pod here. So ideally you have the CU UP or thereabout. You see it here, and then it gets connected to the UPF, and then it goes to the internet or to the data network. So I have 3 Git repos hosted on GitHub. I'll show you in a moment. So this Git repo here is, I actually just copied it from the Nephio. I did a fork of it, and then I just added some more packages that I will be making use of. So that's why I actually had this here. So you see, whatever packages that are saved here, Nephio will pull it, and then it will update it. You will see it in the UI, right? And then the next step is, you see, I said the step 2 is each one is going to each of the clusters, the regional and the edge cluster repo. So we'll create like a deployment package here, intent, for deploying to all this to this cluster. So what it does is that, you see here, Nephio is not actually communicating directly with this cluster. That's very, very important to make note. The only thing it's doing is it's controlling these repos, and then whatever thing that is pushed to these repos then will be reconciled back into these clusters. So you see, the second step, like I said, is, okay, you push the deployment packages to the you push it to the edge cluster or to the regional cluster, and then once you do that, the config sync will pick it up. We pick up the changes and then do the deployment in those clusters. So here you see I have the Flux Helm controller here. So like I said, I'll be making use of the Flux. I'll be making use of Helm chart instead of an operator. So let's see how clusters are. So here we see I have the management cluster here. So if we just do a kubectl get namespaces, just for us to know that we are in the Nephio management cluster. So you see here you have the porch, you have the Nephio UI and Nephio system. If you go to the regional cluster and if we do a get ns, so we see that we only have the config sync, right? And then yeah, so in the Open5gs, let's see, we don't have anything in the Open5gs. This was just because I was doing some tests before I create this video. So on the edge cluster also, you see that we don't have any Nephio stuff there. So what we have is the Flux. You see that we have the Flux system. So the Flux system is essentially what we have there is the Flux controllers. So if you do a get pod, you see that you have the M controller and then the source controller. The source controller is where you first of all add the Helm repo to. Once you add the Helm repo, then you can now create your Helm. You cannot deploy your Helm chart using the Helm release package. So let's go on to the repos and see what we have. So here we have the regional. Like I said, you have the regional. I already have some deployments already, so as not to make this video too long. So you can see I have multis, I have the Flux Helm controllers. All these were installed using Nephio, but we'll have a look at how something like this will be done also. The reason is that you can see that these two stuff are needed. I need multis for the secondary network interfaces, then the Flux Helm controller. Then if we go back to my repos here, and then so this for the edge cluster also, but let's go to this. So I made some changes here. So like I said, here you see we have what do we have here? yeah, so you see here that I added these two, right? You can see the Open5gs, the control plane Helm release, and Open5gs user plane Helm release. So if we go into here, we see exactly what it's in a normal kept deployment package. So if we see only what is really special here is just the Helm release manifest. So you see here I'm picking up first of all, yes, I also created the Flux CD Helm chart repo, because you can see here that it's referencing a Helm repository. So if we go to this folder here, you see that we have an Helm repo. And then what I will do is there is also something called package variant set in what do you call it, in Nephio. So if you come down here in this blog post, you will see that an example was actually made here, that instead of you running the kept command, kept deploy, or kept pull and clone, and you can actually make use of the package variant set, and it will help you to pick up a package from a particular they call it blueprint repository. Pick up the packages from there. You can see you have a repo, and then you are saying this package. Actually, this package is essentially a folder, like it's a folder in your management in the repo I showed you. So and then you also have the revision. The revision is like a version which has to match what do you call it, a tag. So a tag, when you are creating your tag, it has to actually have a combination of your package name and your revision name number. So if we go back to if we go back here into my the repository, and if you go under tags, you will see a lot of tags which first of all, it has to match the name of the folder, which is a package, and then you have to give it like a version. So this is how Nephio will be able to reconcile it and give it a version name and then the version number. Okay, so in this video, we'll be making use of the package variant set to deploy to the regional clusters and then to the edge cluster. So the first thing we are going to do is to actually deploy this Flux CD Open5gs chart repo. The reason being that you can see we are going to use a package variant and then deploy this to the two clusters that we have here. So we are going to be deploying it into these two clusters we have here. And you see that there is nothing specific about a cluster. So that's why we can just apply this to both clusters. So to see an example of what that will look like, you can see here, I'm going to apply this in my Nephio management cluster. So you see that I'm giving it a name, Flux CD Open5gs chart repo, and then I'm also giving it a repo. The upstream blueprint repo that I'm going to be using is this. And then what's the package name? Like I said, it's just take note that this is like your folder in the folder name, and then what version is this? Version 1. And then you can see targets. The target will now be the repositories. And take note, we are not saying that we are pushing this to a cluster. We are pushing it to a repository. So what this means is that Nephio will pick up these same packages that we have set here as the upstream, and then it's going to clone it, and then it's going to create a deployment package and then push it to each of these Git repositories. And once it pushes it into this Git repository, take note that we also have config sync. So what config sync will do is that then it's going to reconcile it in those two clusters, because those two clusters are connected to these individual repositories. So to make sure that we don't have Helm Flux CD Helm repository here, so we can do a watch and then do a kubectl get Helm repo -a. Can do that on both the regional cluster and the edge cluster. And then what we do is we are going to apply this package variance set. We are going to apply it in the Nephio cluster, management cluster. So we do this. Okay, so and you see that says the package variance set is there. And then if you go to the, let's go to my repo here. So you see, if you go to the regional, you can see here it's actually saying updated now. I see updated now. And then if you go to the edge, you will see that it would have created a branch. So you see here, it's saying draft. You can see this flux CD, Open5gs chart repo package variant 1. So what it's saying is, okay, there is an intent here. And then someone else can actually have a look at this and then take a look and check what is about to be done. But if you come back to the Nephio UI, we'll see here that we have 2 draft revisions, one in edge 1 and then in regional edge. So let's quickly do this. So if you see here, you can see here, if I bring my mouse here, you can see that it's saying draft version of this. These are the existing deployment currently. That's the Helm controllers and Helm tools. If I click on this, then we can go through what we call, you can propose it, right? So you click on propose, and then if you click on propose, if you go back to, if you go back to this, you realize it was in draft. If we refresh, it would have changed it to proposed. All right. So actually, Nephio it has write access to your cluster. I mean, to your Git repo, and then it's creating the branches. Once we click approve, you will see that this branch will be merged to main, and then the config sync can now kick off. So let's quickly do that so as to save time. So I'll do this I've done this for the edge, so you can see that it's done. Let's quickly go back and then do the same thing for, you can see we have 1 draft because we have already approved for edge 1. So the remaining 1 draft, it will be for the regional cluster. So yeah, we still see, you can see here that it's still draft. So we click on it, and actually you can also have a look at what is being proposed there. So let's see what's being proposed also. So here you see you have the Kpt file. You have, if you open the Helm repository, and then if you switch to the YAML stuff, you can see here that it's actually what I have. I showed earlier that it's actually installing a Helm repository. So let's quickly do a propose and then approve, and then we have a look at how it will eventually be created in our cluster. So if we come back here, let's see if we have, okay, so it will take a bit of time for the config sync will kick off shortly, and then we'll see the I think we did it for the hedge first, so we'll see it in the hedge repo first. So let's do a pause, and then we'll come back once we have the Helm repos. Okay, yeah. So we have the Helm repos now. So you can see this is just some seconds. The hedge cluster was a bit, because I did that first, so you can see that this is more than a minute, but you can see here that it's been done. So the first step in having a Helm release via the Flux CD controllers is to first of all create a Helm repo, and then you reference the Helm repo in your Helm release. So we've done that. So the next thing that we need to do is to actually create the package, the control plane. Or, well, I would like to first of all maybe create the user plane, the UP, because the SMF needs. So I just prefer like a clean logs, but it's definitely not it's not super important which one you do first, because the SMF eventually will connect to the UPF, and then you see that the PF-CP association will be up. So let's for here, so we are creating another package variant set. So I'm still also checking because I know there is something called package variant. So I'm still trying to learn what the major difference is. But currently, I'm just trying to go through with the blog post I referenced from Kubernetes. So I might still come back to do another video and then maybe try to see exactly what we have, like the difference between the package variant and package variant set. But anyway, currently what we are trying to do is we are trying to install the UPF in the Edge 01 cluster. So what we have here is that, okay, I'm pulling my upstream blueprint repository is this. So you can also have a look at that in the Nephio UI. So if you come here, if you see under the team repository, you can see here the Infinity Dawn Nephio packages. So you can also see the various packages that I have. You can see here that it's exactly what you're also seeing in the Git repo. So you can see here that you have the control plane, the user plane, and then you see the versions, which I said matches to the tags in your Git repo. And then you have also the Flux CD the Helm repo packages. So that's what we'll be doing now. Let's do this for the Edge cluster, for the UPF. So if we do this, like we said, you can actually use config sync also for this, even in the Nephio management cluster, instead of having to create the manifest directly. So, but for now, still just keeping everything a bit simple. So if we go to the Nephio management cluster and then we create this, so we'll see that this for the UP, and then if we go back to our repo, or if we come back here to the Nephio UI, we'll see that we have another draft revision. Or we could also see, let's see from the deployment screen here, so that we'll know where this is actually going. So at a glance, you see these are all the things we are doing, but you can see here that this one is in draft revision, and then which repository is it going? It's going to the Edge 01, which is where the UPF will go, and then you see that this is the blueprint that we are actually making use of, which is version 3 of it. So if I click on it, and if we also go back to this, let's refresh this. So we'll see that we'll still see something in draft here, which is what the UP Helm release. You can see it's in draft. And then let's click propose. And then let's click approve. So once we click on the approve, and then you can take note that we don't have like the Open5gs or 5gs folder here. So if I do a refresh, then we'll see that it's there. So you can see I see committed 1 minute ago. So essentially what this means is that if we do a watch on the Open5gs repo, on the Open5gs namespace, so shortly we should be able to see the ports coming up. So let's since we have that, let's also do it for the regional. Before this comes up, I believe before the regional one comes up, then the UPF will have come up also. So let's do that. So here we go to this. So here we are creating the CP control plane, and then which repository we are pushing it to the regional repository, which of course is connected to the, which controls the regional Kubernetes cluster. So we'll create this also. Then let's go back to the Nephio UI, and then we should see a revision also, a draft revision. Yeah, we see a draft revision, and then if we click on the deployment, then we see here that, okay, yeah, this is in draft, and then it's actually going to the regional repository. So let's do the propose also, and then let's do the approve. Then we can also do, okay, yeah, we can even see that the UPF is actually up. So we can also do a watch here on the regional cluster to on the Open5gs namespace. So if we do a get pod, you can see that we do not have any pod currently, but here in the edge cluster, if we do we can do a Helm release. So we can see that it actually got installed. You can see this is 46 seconds ago. And if we do a describe, so let's do, that's in the flux namespace, flux describe release, that's Open5gs UP. Oh, sorry, typo there. Release. Okay, so you can see it pulled the Helm chart from the OCI repository. By the way, let's see what's okay. So it's still not. So the Helm, we are making use of. I'm also making use of GitOps as my OCI repository for the Helm chart. So you can have a look at it. If you look at the packages here, you can see that I have two packages here. So you can see here, this is the user plane. So this is actually where it's actually pulling the Helm chart from. So this on the edge cluster. So let's see here. So we still don't have the. So let's also do a watch on the Helm release. Okay, yeah, so you can actually see that reconciliation is in progress. So you can see this is in 25 seconds. So let's do a watch on the we should see some pods coming up here. So we can see here now that the pods are coming up on the regional cluster, which we have the control plane network functions, the 5G network functions. So ideally we have in my own Helm chart, I have some init containers that makes the ordering of the network function come up cleanly. For instance, the NRF needs to be deployed and running before other network functions will come up. So you can see the MongoDB also needs to be up and running before the PCF, the web UI, and the UDR can come up. So you can see the web UI is coming up here, and then shortly you should see the SCP also needs to be up before the remaining components will, because I'm also making use of the SCP for the SBI communication. So yeah, the other pods are just, this is the import, this is just to create a user a UE profile in the MongoDB database. So it's not so you can actually make use of the web UI if you wish. So now you see that the SCP is coming up. So you can see that all the remaining network functions did not come up until the SCP and the NRFs are up, and the NRF is up. So so you can see that one of init container has passed. So that means The first one is they have checked that the NRF is up. Then the second one is they are trying to check if the SCP is also up. So the UDR is also coming up. So the UDR should come up anytime from now. Or there is no strict order for the remaining ones, so they could come up at any point in time. So we give it some time for all the pods to come into running, and then we'll check the logs just as a last resort to show that everything is up. So on the edge cluster, we could also check for the logs on the UPF. Oh, okay, yeah. So we already have the SMF. The SMF actually has already come up. So let's see. Okay, the SMF is up also. So the only thing that is remaining is the UDR. Okay, the UDR is up, and then you have the PCF. So everything is up and running. And take note, we didn't have to do any of these directly on the clusters. In this video, we've another thing that is very another thing that I find very interesting here is that we have been able to use a lot of projects here. For instance, we make use of Nephio, and then the repos are in GitHub. I mean, you could actually make use of your private repository like the one that is in the learning example for the release one. I just decided to make use of GitHub to make it a bit faster for me, and to be able, so that, I mean, maybe like also a reference for anyone that wants to have a look at it. And then we also make use of the config sync, like that's the GitOps controller. And then we also make use of the Flux project, which is the Flux Helm controller. Then the Kubernetes cluster, even though I didn't talk about it, is from Rancher, that's RKE2. So we can see that this is a combination of different projects, and they were able to work properly. And it's so Nephio, it's not strictly saying that you have to, like I said, that for instance the config sync, you can also replace it with any GitOps tool that you feel, I mean, that you prefer. So by and by, this is what I've been able to learn from Nephio, and I hope you've also gained one or two things from here, and maybe try to give it try to deploy this also, and let's learn together. You can also drop your ideas or your contributions in the comment section. They will be well appreciated. Thank you, and see you in the next video.